The Lowe Post is brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a Thursday afternoon. We are now 6 days from the NBA draft and some undetermined amount of time. I think probably 4 days from the lifting of the moratorium on transactions, and all the GMs have itchy trigger fingers and everyone's ready to do some stuff. So why not have the general manager of the Washington Wizards, Tommy Shepard, on? Tommy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Zach. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in. We're almost there. It's just long. Everything's taken very long. But you're well, your family is well?
We are. Everybody is calm. Everybody's healthy. That's all we can ask for. It's just, like you said, with the calendars have no meaning right now. It just comes down to tell me how many days we have until the draft, free agency, and we move on. You're used to free agency being in July, but hey, here we are.
Have they
November never hurt anybody?
I don't even know what. Apparently Thanksgiving's coming up. So it's right now. It's 1:00 about on Thursday afternoon Eastern time. Have they told you yet when the moratorium is lifting on transactions? Like when you're going to be allowed to make trades?
Not as of about 5 minutes ago when I checked my email. So we know it's coming, and we can roll with whatever it is. Just tell us when and what to do, and we'll be fine.
So compared to a normal draft, you're picking ninth. The rumors are flying fast and furious about every team. Compared to a normal draft, do you feel like you have the same, more, less sufficient intel, medical, all that stuff on the guys you're interested in?
I think we have sufficient for sure. You always want more. That you're missing the contacts, the extra levels that we can usually get to in the summer, right prior to the draft, seeing people up close, being at their workouts and stuff. But everybody has put in the body of work before COVID shut down college basketball last year, so we have a lot to go on. We had all the Zoom interviews you could possibly want with draft prospects, and you could still use the phone. You could still get a hold of people. So I think we're good. You always want more.
Let's just talk about the elephant in the room instead of ignoring it. You have the single most coveted player, allegedly, maybe someday to be put on the trade market, but not now. I don't think in Bradley Beal, with 6 days before the draft. I mean, you know this. He'd be the belle of the ball if you made him available. I assume the status quo remains. He is not available. You are not making calls. You're not taking calls, or whatever phraseology you want to use. Or am I wrong?
No, that's correct. We're building this team around Bradley Beal. He's a tremendous human being. He's a tremendous player. He's exactly what we want to have here with the Washington Wizards. Last year was a very long season for everybody. We were missing a pretty big talent with John Wall, and that a lot of that fell on Bradley's shoulders to try to carry the franchise through some difficult times. We readjusted our entire roster. Zach, we have Thomas Bryant, Troy Brown, the only two players on our roster that played with John besides Bradley. So it's a brand new roster for when John comes back. He's got a lot of new teammates to deal with, to meet. But certainly all this is around Bradley, and we move forward. Bradley's been a fantastic partner, starting with last offseason when he extended with us, and everything moving forward. He has always been just a tremendous partner. He's a great basketball player, but he's a great person, huge in our community, huge in his community, huge in all the endeavors that he does off the floor. Kind of encompasses everything we're trying to be about.
So as of right now, no matter what offer comes in, Minnesota calls with X, whoever calls with X, you have no plans or intentions to move Bradley Beal.
That's correct.
What do you do? Because people call. I assume people call you. Do you just throw your phone across the room, or are you polite? You're unfailingly polite. You just very politely tell them, "Can we talk about the election, or can we talk about something else besides this?"
Oh, you're always trying to make your team better. There's other players to talk about. Who on your team can we talk about? Okay, well, let's talk about them. So they call the Wizards, Bradley Beal. No, we're building around him. So that ends that conversation, but you pivot to other players on the roster or what else is going around the league. So there's always plenty to talk about.
You've seen John playing. I think you've gone. Have you gone to visit John?
I visited John several times this summer. I visited Bradley as well. You try to stay out of the gyms, but certainly I've watched his progress. John's got more video than the Star Wars series out there on Instagram and different places about himself. But his progress has been tremendous. We're really excited to get him back on the court.
Yeah, I don't care about the Instagram videos. I care about like I don't know if have you seen him play like more than 10 consecutive minutes of basketball?
I've had access to videos that are several scrimmages in a row, and he looks tremendous.
Um, and so you're confident that we're going to get something like I mean I feel like I don't even remember the last time I saw him play. It's been a long time. You're confident that you have the all-star backcourt that you had before.
I would say when you come back from an injury and you've been out for 2 years, it'd be presumptuous to say it's the John Wall that left us. Actually, I hope it's better than that one because at that time he was playing hurt. But when John and Bradley were at full health, you could take it back to the year we lost to Boston in the conference semifinals in Game 7. That was a very impressive backcourt and something to build around, and that's what we trying to do. But then life happens, right? And you get injuries and things happen, and you have to move on. Like I said, we changed our roster around, but those two pillars are still here. And Bradley's done everything possible to improve his play while John's been out. Now you add John back to the mix. I think we got a formidable backcourt. And in the meantime, we added some young pieces. Thomas Bryant is showing down the middle. Drafted Rui Hachimura. We need to re-sign Davis Bertans, and then you got pieces to work with around that. And we're just trying to add depth, quality depth, and get better.
Well, let's talk about that because there's been some Bertans rumors. I mean, you know better than I do that you could sign and trade Davis Bertans for lots of stuff. Is he a part of your core going forward as you see it?
Yeah, we ended the season saying that was our off-season priority, and that nothing's changed there. Davis fits our team perfectly. I think we fit him perfectly. The opportunity he had to play with Bradley Beal unlocked his game, and he took it to he showed the whole league he's one of the best shooters. Now you add John Wall, who's over 10 times a game. I think it's going to be hard to guard. Somebody's going to be open on the court, and that makes it exciting for Davis.
Let's talk about some of your young guys that went to the bubble and I think for better or worse, sort of changed their perceptions a little bit. Let's start with Thomas Bryant. I'm very curious about Thomas Bryant. I've actually written, he's been in my 10 things column a few times because I'm intrigued by him. I'll just put it to you bluntly. Can Thomas Bryant be a starting center on a good playoff team, or is he a really, really good offensive spark plug backup center?
Well, I think you got to – I never try to put a limit on a player, especially one so young like Thomas is. He's got to keep making progress. He's shown us he's a starting center for the Washington Wizards, and we want to be where you say, so he's going to have to show he's worthy of that, and I think he's put in all the work. Now he's got to come in, produce, and that's not pressure on him. That's something we would talk about if he was sitting here with the three of us. Thomas knows he's got a great opportunity to play major minutes with two very good players, Bradley Beal, John Wall. He's going to get a lot of – the ball's going to find him. The ball finds energy. Thomas's game is based on his energy. And I think he's shown he's a three-point shooter too. So where we're headed to, we want to be back in the playoffs. He's on our team. That's the hope.
I think he can be a really dynamic offensive center. I don't think there's any question about that. And I was glad to see that was the single biggest change, I think, for any of your players in the bubble was that he took all the long twos. He didn't just dabble in threes. He was like, I'll take 6, 7, 8 a game. And he looked pretty smooth doing it. To me, the question is all about defense and rebounding because that's gonna determine the answer to my question. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think we can do much better helping him by just containing the dribbler, right? There was so much penetration last year. We didn't do a great job of impacting the ball offensively. So Thomas is constantly under attack. That gets a little old, certainly, and he's getting in foul trouble. And he's got to learn to keep his hands up, certainly move his feet. But he's made some progress. But we can certainly help defensively, stopping the ball and do a much better job before it ever gets to the paint attacks. And I think that's what we're working on. It's our big priority in the offseason.
I put Rui Hachimura, second-team All-Rookie, on my ballot. We filled out those ballots before the bubble. I think if there was anyone on your team among the core young guys who people watched in the bubble and said, that didn't quite meet my expectations, it's Rui. What do you think happened, and how do you think he fits on next season's Wizards team?
I think he's a perfect fit. And I take away from the bubble, it's kind of it was for us. I'm not saying it's a glorified summer league, not at all. But the bubble game showed us an unlikely lineup of players out there. It didn't have Bradley, didn't have Davis, didn't have John. Everybody kind of had to step up a chair. And as you know, in a High School Musical, you start taking away the top line, the next line up doesn't sound as good. And that, for us, it was a great opportunity for Thomas to get a lot more shots than he normally get. Troy Brown the same way. What I think for us defensively with Rui, I think he's gotten much better since if you go back to the trade deadline, his defensive numbers were much improved. Rui was able to take a lot more threes in the bubble, and that's something we're really going to be on him to do to be effective for us. I think he needs to be able to spread the floor. But I think the games maybe you remember him were the tough games. He played very well early. The last game he wasn't able to play in, so I give him a little incomplete. But the body of work for throughout the season, he actually had 3 seasons, right? He started out, was playing great, got injured, came back, didn't miss a beat, was playing great, COVID, closed down, now you come to the bubble. That's a very bizarre rookie year for anybody. But for him, I think he proved he's going to be somebody we can count on in the future to be a very consistent performer at his position, but he can guard other positions. Try to put the ball in his hands a little bit, let him guard threes. He's actually pretty good at guarding the big threes. And we just got to build on that. But there's a great body of work that says he had a good rookie season. Thanks for voting.
I thank you. Hey, look, he was one of the last 2 guys on. I thought about it. I like him as a player. I like his feel for the game. Does he walk into camp as the starting 4 next year? Does Troy Brown have a chance to start at 3? Where are we on the forward spots?
No, certainly. I think Rui he's the incumbent there at the wing. There's going to be opportunities for Troy. There's going to be opportunities for Isak Bonga. Certainly, we got to wait till after draft and free agency and see how all that settles down. But certainly, Rui coming in has the starting job. Troy ended the season as a starter, and he has to nail that down. But we like to just say, like, players tell you what to do, Zach, by how they perform. If you deserve it, you're going to get what you deserve.
Let's talk about the draft. You're picking 9th. There's rumors of trading up. There's rumors of trading down. I know you're not going to tell me any of that. I'm not even going to ask.
Rumors, man.
So let me ask you this: in terms of experience level, what kind of player are you looking for? Are you going to lean more? Well, do you want someone who's ready to come in and play 20 minutes a game right away, or are you willing to be a little more patient?
I think you have to balance whoever's there available when we draft at 9. There's some players that we like in this draft that we think, hey, they could probably be in our rotation this year. And there's a couple other players I said, look, we're going to have to be so incredibly patient, but in 2 years, 3 years, this is a swing for the fences type player, but they might be much better in 3 years than anybody else in this draft. Then we're willing to wait. So we're not dying for a rotation player to the point where you're just going to draft somebody, force them in there, and in 2 years regret what you're doing. I don't think that's wise at all. But, for the rumors, hey, I know Fleetwood Mac, that album coming back, it's got big hits on iTunes. So that's the only rumors I listen to. That's a hell of an album.
I can't really comment intelligently about Fleetwood Mac. It's a blind spot in my music oeuvre.
Actually isn't that's not my taste at all, my speed. But I'm just saying rumors are rumors. They're fun this time of year. Certainly, I don't envy you having to chase all of them down. I just know for us, we ignore the noise, do what we have to do.
So okay.
If it sounds too good to be true, Zach, it usually is.
That's definitely true in life. I guess you can't assume this, but assuming some version of the status quo, and John returns and all that, what are reasonable expectations for the Wizards next season? Because if you look at the East, all the good teams are right now, as things stand now, slated to still be pretty good. Sure. And Brooklyn is getting its big guns back. And that right there gets you to 7 teams. And, and we could, Boston, Toronto, Miami, Indiana, Brooklyn, Philadelphia. And am I missing one? Milwaukee, of course. That's 7. And so that leaves one playoff spot. Like, people talk about the East, and it has been this way, where you can sort of just limp into the 6, 7, 8 spot. That's not going to be the case next year, at least as things stand now. So what's reasonable to expect of a healthy, let's say, Wizards team?
Well, certainly you want to have a better record than we did last year. On a 72-game season, I would hesitate to give you a number. But I think with that backcourt, if it gels and we're able to get out there and stay healthy all year, certainly getting back to the playoffs is a goal. That's not the be-all, end-all. Our goal is to continue to get better, to add pieces, and give us a chance to be perennially successful. If we just said, hey, make it all in, let's go, make or break playoffs this year, that would really hinder our future. And that's what we're trying to show Bradley, hey, you come here, you're going to have a chance to win every year, get to the playoffs every year, and extend your playoff experience every year. And to do that, it does require some luck, certainly, but being patient is a priority for us. We don't want to do something that would really hinder your future.
Yeah, I asked because, in the past, you guys have made a decent number of win now trades. And it's not as if you gave up, with the exception of, I think, the Randy Foye, Mike Miller trade, which is ages ago now. You traded a first-round pick for Bogdanovich and to get off Andrew Nicholson, for Gortat, for Markieff Morris, Oubre for Trevor Ariza, I think kind of fits that bill a little bit. And again, all those trades are, it's not like you gave up a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick or whatever, but they add up a little bit, and they certainly sort of evince a team that is like hungry to chase a little bit of short-term gain. Is it a challenge to resist those kind of trades while still building something that's good enough in the present day to convince Bradley, hey, we have enough going on here right now. We don't need to go get that guy and like hemorrhage the future a little bit?
Yeah, certainly I learned from the past. I don't live there. I've been the GM for a year, and I don't think we're not on the same wavelength as maybe some ways things were done in the past. But I do think the Gortat trade was one of the best trades. I do think getting Markieff Morris with that pick was a great trade. I go back to Antoine Jameson for Devin Harris. I do that trade in a million years. We've done stuff on draft day, certainly. But for me, and where I see the Wizards collectively with our coach, with our staff, our front office group, is to do the right thing legacy-wise. We're going to put the strongest team in place so it can grow for the future. That's the most important thing, to get that quick high off of 2 more wins, 3 more wins, but what it costs you, a draft pick that could help you in the future, that's not worth it to us. But what we do want to do, we certainly want to give a little bit more veteran presence to help finish games. Last year, I think we lost 14 games we had fourth quarter leads in. And a lot of times it's just getting that one shot that you don't take, the one stop that you didn't make, makes the difference. And rookies learn, the hard way sometimes. And certainly this year, nice thing about having 8 guys, 25 and younger, 7 rookie contracts, those guys are all, they still have opportunities to get better and learn. But sometimes you learn better sitting on the bench and letting somebody else show you how to do it than getting out there and getting cooked by yourself. I do remember a game where we played Chicago here, and we had the lead last second situation, and where Isak Bonga made a foul right at the buzzer, and we ended up losing that game in overtime. And he learned from that. Later in the season, we had a similar circumstance. Isak stood tall, and we won a game. Same kind of situation. So watching his growth, and he's just 21, we think he's going to be an exciting defensive wing for us. But you have to let those guys get better, and the only way they can get better is by playing.
Can he shoot it well enough? Can Bonga shoot it well enough to reach that ceiling?
I think he continues to evolve, and he's improving. You never know who shoots it well enough till you get out there and play the games. I saw the work put in, and I've been very impressed by his progress.
Now you have seen a lot over the years. With how many years with the Wizards now? Like 16?
I'm going into my 17th year.
You've seen a lot. We don't have time to get into all the stuff you've seen, nor would you want to get into all the stuff you've seen.
You wouldn't want to see some of the stuff I've seen.
No, and a lot of it was very public. But John got a lot of scrutiny for that Instagram video that came out with him partying and all that in the offseason. I don't particularly get bothered by stuff like that, but because it's John and the Wizards, it becomes a thing, right? So when something like that happens in your organization, like, what is it like for a GM? Are you on the phone with John right away? Is it a huddle up? Like, what happens?
Well, certainly it's very disappointing to see something like that. And knowing the person, the character of John Wall, it's just a difficult conversation, but you can't get framed if you're not in the picture, right? And we could say that's not who you are, that's not who you are, but if you're in that photo, a photo goes around the world before you have a chance to explain it. He made atone for it immediately. He apologized. The incident, you got to put the past in the past. Like I said before, learn from the past, don't live there. If it happens again, now you got a situation where you say, okay, you didn't learn from that. I think John learned plenty there. It certainly hurt him. It hurt the franchise, but he made atone for it, and we got to move on. You accept an apology, and as long as it doesn't happen again, hey, we all learned from that. But certainly it didn't represent who John Wall really is. If you look in the millions of dollars he's donated to charity, the hours and things that he does can be undone by one photo. So that was kind of our big conversation. Certainly he knows I was disappointed. I watched John grow up. When he came into the league, 18, 19 years old, now he's 30 years old, has 2 kids. We used to talk about everything but having, where now, I talked to him about how to tell your kids to go to bed, how to get them to go to sleep before we used to talk about basketball. So we both evolved. He's a father. I'm a father. We have more to talk about. But something like that betrays his true character. That's not who he was, but that's what the photo showed or the video, whatever you're saying. But we put that behind us. I think John made the best way to learn is if it happens again, then you didn't learn from it, right? So hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Well, I have to say, I've said all this before, both to John and publicly. Like, I really hope we get John Wall back because I think I did a whole Sports Center video essay about this. I think he's actually an underrated passer, and his floor vision, because he's at his peak anyway, he's so fast and so explosive. I think his vision and his anticipation has gotten overlooked. But damn, is he fast and explosive. And John in the open court is one of the most exciting things in the NBA, full stop. And I've also said this, like, everyone, the Wizards, you probably feel this. Everyone like, oh, it's so Wizards, hashtag that's so Wizards. There's JaVale trying to dunk from the foul line and Blatch and this. People laugh at the Wizards a little bit here and there. But, like, John and Brad have been no joke in the playoffs. And you can say it's the East, blah, blah, blah. You destroyed the Raptors one year. You beat the Bulls one year. You pushed the Pacers one year. You might beat in the same year you beat the Raptors, you advance to play the 60-win Hawks. You might win that series if John doesn't break his wrist. Like, I can tell you from talking to people around the league all those years, like, no one's excited to play Wall and Beal in the playoffs. Like, no one looks the sheer talent of those two, like, gets the attention of the best teams. It's not like they're not scared of them, but it gets their attention. And actually, you look at some teams, like, again, it's West versus East. Like, the Clippers won 3 playoff series in 7 years or something like that. Like, you guys have won, it's again different conferences, but I think there's a tendency to sort of gloss over that these guys have done pretty well in important moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad and John, they've shown in playoff atmosphere their game raises up. But I ignore the noise, Zach, when you refer to guys. Hey, JaVale and Andre, those guys haven't been here for 10, 12 years. So if people want to keep talking about that, I kind of, what can you do if people want to dwell in the past? I really focus on this year's team and what's ahead of us. We're really exciting. Like I said, we got 2 players left from when John last played. So it's a totally different roster. Scotty Brooks is a proven coach. When he has a healthy team, we have 49 wins. When we had a healthy team, we were going to the playoffs. So we got to give him a healthy team, and let's see what he can do. I know what John and Bradley can do, and I can't say enough about them, their ability to rise their game up in the playoffs, and certainly I think we can do it again, like you said. And our biggest challenge right now is to manage expectations as we get to the starting line, make sure everybody's in the best shape, we're in the best health, and then, the whole rest of the season, one of the words we're going to speak of every day is respect your fellow man, the compliance that it's going to require for everybody to live a safe, healthy life for each other. This is where we're really going to have to be the brotherhood, and everybody, let's take care of ourselves for each other.
Is there anyone in this draft? I don't know where you guys ranked on defense last year, but it was not good. Is there anyone in this draft who can step in and help your defense?
I think there's several players that could, for sure. But what's really going to help us is a healthy John Wall, continuity, a little bit more repetitions. That whenever we had a chance to get on a good defensive run, it was after the trade deadline, and certainly that changed the complexion of a team that was 30th. The only reason we were 30th is because there were only 30 teams, right? But we went from 30th to 14 pretty quick, and really that's just a couple more stops a game, a couple more 50-50 balls, and what we've got to do a better job on is forcing misses. We got to do a better job defensive rebounding. I think those things will take care of itself. And John was on the all-defensive team at one time. Bradley, when he doesn't have to play 48 minutes and carry the load offensively, Bradley's one of the better two-way players in the NBA. So I know our defensively, our backcourt can get back and help us get that down, and then it's going to come up to everybody else. Hey, just do your job. Don't worry about everybody else here or there. You know how bigs get, and they get a little – help side comes over and they get sensitive, and all of a sudden nobody wants to leave their man. Nobody wants to come help. We got to relieve all that stress. Hey, do your job, do what was asked, and everything works itself out. And that's where our emphasis has really been. Our coaches have been just laboriously poring over ways to get better defensively. And Scotty's got a good training camp planned, and we're excited for what's ahead.
Speaking of, you talking about John and fatherhood and how you guys talk about that. You have a little bit of an unusual family setup for school that I think you were like ahead of the game when the pandemic hit. Could you please explain to listeners who may not know what is going on in the Shepherd household pre-COVID?
Well, Zach's referred to my wife and I of 27 years. We have 7 children. And we homeschool. We made a decision when we got married, we were going to homeschool our children because we assumed at that time I was working at UNLV, but we assume if you're going to be in athletics, you're going to get fired every couple of years and have to move around and do all this. Well, fast forward 27 years, I've been 2 places, but throughout it all, we've homeschooled our children. So we've had 2 graduate from college, 2 in college, and 3 on their way. So far, so good. The hardest part is the PTA meetings when the kids want the teacher fired and the teacher wants everybody out suspended. I'm the dean for that, the dean of mean. But Zach, throughout COVID, I've been trying to help my children with their homework, and I kind of hear it in their voice. I leave the room and they say, "Hey, you got to help me. Dad just screwed this all up." And so now I'm in charge of lunch and PE and try to help those kids out when I can. But my wife is a saint. The homeschooling's been great, and they've been able to help their friends a little bit adjust. With it, when you're a homeschool kid, you kind of recognize when it's new. I think everybody they're great at making friends so quickly. But the Zoom stuff, they're doing Zoom. They do a co-op school as well, 2 times a week. So they're on Zoom and they get that piece. But everybody's missing their friends, no matter where you're at, and that's hard.
So what do you do? I mean, I don't even know there are ways to find curriculum and all this, but what do you do? Like if a senior in high school came to me and was like, this chemistry problem is flummoxing me, I would just say, well, you're out of luck. You ask a chemistry teacher. I wouldn't know what the hell I'm supposed to, I don't know anything.
Yeah, it is difficult. What I do is I call my wife. I say, "Hey, Junior here's got a question for you," because she's a pretty good solution-based person for that. A lot of the stuff that kids are doing, their curriculum is driven, and it's pretty you can follow step by step, and they actually have people that tutors that they can tune into that can help them through the more difficult things as they get older. But I think one thing that homeschool's allowed for us, for our children, is really allow them to be logical thinkers, to continue to pursue the correct answers and think for themselves. And it gets tested often, for sure. And certainly they know not to ask me because I don't know half of what they know. But I think the results for us have been fantastic. I don't go out and recommending it to people, but if people ask me, it's been great for us.
Last question, I'll let you go. I thought one of the cool kind of subplots of the spring and summer in the NBA was you guys have been out in front as an organization on a lot of social justice issues and a lot of COVID relief issues, but in particular, Bradley Beal and Natasha Cloud of the Mystics kind of becoming like a tag team and Brad writing about and talking about this is the first time he's voted and all that stuff. Was that cool for you to see? I mean, it seemed as if they sort of organically took leadership of it. Like no one pushed them. It's almost like the organization saw them taking the lead and said, "Okay, let's join them. They're taking this. They're taking this as their own."
And certainly, they were the beacons of hope in a very despairing time. But when you go back to the original statement that the Wizards crafted, that the Mystics did, and then certainly joint stuff that they've done since. But the March on Juneteenth, Bradley is an amazing leader, and I really can't give he and Natasha enough credit for standing up on their beliefs, encouraging people. The time that we were in the bubble, some of the access that we had to great people that just only emboldened all of our players and our education level, from Stacey Abrams all the way through. We just had some amazing access. And
what was the Stacey Abrams thing? I don't remember that.
Stacey Abrams did a Zoom call with our team, with the Mystics as well, and was basically laid out her plan of what was going to happen in this election month on that election day. Her story about how she completely got screwed over being the governor of Georgia, and that makes sure, when you realize that she helped over 800,000 people register to vote, and you look at the election results, and you don't tell me that she didn't make a difference. And she convinced all of our players, you can stand up and make a difference. We had people register to vote in the bubble, and so much of that was inspiring. But our story was inspiring to her too. And I cannot give enough credit to John Thompson III, to Sashi Brown, to Sashia Jones. It starts with Ted Leontis' leadership. But they, behind the scenes, have made so many things available to our players. If it was Malcolm Jenkins, Ibram Kendi, we've had the best of the best speak to our players, inspire our players. and they take it from there. And certainly for them, I told all of our players, I stand with you. I stand next to you. Your voice, our support. There's nothing that we can do that's going to take us backwards. But we're all going to be challenged. You know, the bubble's over. We're out. There's a new world we're going into. We cannot recede. We have to move forward. We have to continue to push forward on these social justice issues and stand for what we said we're going to stand for. You know, if you can do what you say what you do, then you've accomplished it. T-shirt slogans and stuff like that, they fade. But your actions are really what people are going to judge you on. And I think I have no problems whatsoever. I have extreme confidence Bradley's going to continue to lead us, Natasha, in those areas. But with the support of our ownership group, and like I said, Sashia, Sashi, John Thompson, those people have been wonderful support system for us as we move forward.
Well, you're in the right town
I noticed that.
To get some good meetings, to take some good meetings. Listen, you've got a lot to do. The draft is coming up. Trades are going to come flying. I appreciate you making a little time. One day we'll do this over a beer in Vegas, and we can tell some good old Wizard stories and UNLV stories and stuff like that. Now is not that time. You got work to do. Tommy Shepard, sincerely, good luck. And it's a big offseason. Good luck to you.
Hey, Zach, thank you very much. It's great to see you, and I can't say enough about your support system. You guys have a great day.
All right, it's finally time. The universe did not want us to do this podcast. First, there was a plague. Then Daryl Morey got hired by the Sixers. Then there was an election. But finally, we are doing the podcast I've been dreaming of doing. The Orlando Magic WTF has happened in the last 10 years podcast with maybe a top 5 most famous Orlando Magic fan in the world. Definitely the most famous Orlando Magic fan in the media. Kevin Clark of The Ringer. How are you?
I'm okay. I am not a top 5 famous Magic fan. We have some golfers. Scott Stapp from Creed.
Oh, we're off to a brutal start. right off the bat. I just want to say, first of all, let's just start by saying this. I don't really follow the NFL. I will read your stories because they are so innovative and so well done. And I am a devotee, if that's how you say that word, a devotee of Slow News Day, which is absolutely one of the most delightful creations on the internet. The background music, the use of the newspaper, Club Kevin. I watch as many as I can. There's something soothing about it and funny, and it's all yours. It's something that stands apart from anything else that is out there, so I want to congratulate you on that.
That means the world coming from you, buddy.
Well, longtime listeners know I am fascinated by the plight. It's a plight now of the Orlando Magic. It's a plight. And so I just need to know what it's like to follow this team and what you want going forward. And luckily, we have a news peg to help us. So, Kevin Clark, do you want the Orlando Magic to try to trade for Russell Westbrook, who has maybe not requested a trade, but wants, quote unquote, wants out? Do you want them to? There's only like 4 or 5 teams where it's not on its face insane for them to trade for Russell Westbrook, and your Orlando Magic are one of them. What do you want, Kevin Clark?
I want Russell Westbrook. I don't know if he would want to come. I mean, if you have a house party and you open the door and Keanu Reeves is there, you're going to let Keanu Reeves in, but you're going to say, what are you doing here, Keanu Reeves? And that's sort of how I feel about Westbrook. I don't know why he would want to come. But when I look at this team, listen, no one, I'll go against anybody here. No one has produced more guys over the past 8 years who would be the 4th best player on a finals team than the Magic. Okay. And that's their ceiling. We just collect those guys. And at some point that's got to end. And I saw, so Dan Devine from The Ringer put out a fake trade last night. And he said, Gordon, Ennis, and Markelle Fultz for Westbrook. And the vitriol he received from Magic fans surprised me and surprised him. And a lot of people said, there's a lot of talk, that doesn't fit the timeline. And I understand the timeline got screwed around by the Jonathan Isaac injury and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're kind of saying, what timeline? Where is this going? Who's running these Doctor Strange simulations that tell us, 1 billion times over where this is going? Because I've seen what this core is, and we only have the non-taxpayer mid-level going forward. Not a lot of spending flexibility. We can trade Gordon or Vooch and sort of understand the return we're going to get, but we're not going to get a superstar. And this is a team begging for an all-star. And, the original sin, and I think Hammond and Weltman are way better front office guys than Hennigan was. But the original sin of the Magic is that the last 2 regimes have felt that shooting can be developed and scoring can come later and all that stuff. And it just hasn't happened. And the last 4 years, they haven't been above 24th in scoring in the NBA. The defense has gotten much better under Clifford, thank God. That's why they're able to make the playoffs now. But I just think I went from reading Aaron Gordon for Kelly Oubre rumors 2 days ago to Aaron Gordon for Russell Westbrook. And for me, that's an upgrade. I don't think that the ceiling is very high on this particular group. I remember something very clearly. Adrian Wojnarowski did a podcast with Russillo last fall, and they said in player movement, you're just waiting for the next guy to get pissed off. And that's what the Magic have been waiting for. And now they have that. And I don't think they will because they're a more conservative front office, but I would love to see them make this move because, it would diminish Russell Westbrook's career to say that he would be the Magic's Jimmy Butler, but he would be the guy who he's the superstar where everything would flow through it. And you'd kind of get to see if there's a culture and where the other pieces fit.
The funny thing is when you talk to people about some of the more woe-begone teams in the NBA potentially trading for Russ, you hear like, wow, it'll help them sell tickets. And you're like, wait a second, there are no tickets. No one can go to games. Like, that's not even an applicable argument. So you're younger than I am. I believe it's the monorail episode of The Simpsons. Yes. Is that the one with the escalator to nowhere? Remember the escalator to nowhere where people are just riding the escalator and they just fall off and die? As one of Springfield's great investments of the past. That's the timeline that the Magic are on right now. Their timeline is the escalator to nowhere. So there is no timeline. I agree with you. That Dan Devine trade. So the challenge of trading for Russ for the Magic is obviously the contract is the contract, but you have to give him a team to play with, right? Like you have to give him, like, you can't, if you trade Gordon plus Fournier plus something, he's going to get there and like, okay, cool. Vooch is still here. If Fultz is still there, that's a pretty terrible fit, Fultz and Russ together, which is probably why Dan put him in the trade. But you can't just trade for him and give him like no veterans to play with. And Jonathan Isaac is hurt, so Al Farouk Aminu is now your starting power forward if you trade Aaron Gordon. So he gets there and he's like, oh, cool, like I get to play Russ ball again. Like that's fun. Like I get to play the way I want to play, but I don't really have a team here that can do anything. But it sounds like you've reached a point with the Magic where you just want to shake it up. Just like spin a wheel. Let's spin a Magic wheel and then a wheel of all available players on other teams and just whatever they land on, let's make a trade.
Yeah, that's the point I've reached because I've seen the ceiling, which is that in game one against good teams the last 2 years, they've been frustrated by our length. And listen, the team, the Magic's length and the front office really loves length and athleticism, and that shows up in the playoffs sometimes. They get hot from the 3-point line and they steal a game. And I just don't know what would be needed to progress beyond that except a superstar or a total sort of soft rebuild. And I think it's much easier to just take the superstar that might be available than try to do the soft rebuild. Or, Kevin O'Connor's talked about the Magic trying to get into the lottery, the mid lottery. I understand all that, but I cover the NFL, and the shortest and easiest path to contention every single year is a great quarterback. And that's true of superstars in the NBA. And instead of saying, why don't we make 4 low-key moves, the answer is just to get a superstar. So I am of the theory I would do anything. Listen, I'm going to be 90 years old living in Boca Raton golfing every day and saying, Magic could use a little more scoring. Magic could use a little more scoring. I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years. And to get a scoring superstar would be unbelievable. It would not solve all our problems. This would not be perfect. But I just need a shakeup here, okay?
Does he make you any better than the 8th seed that you currently already are, or are you just more fun? Is it just a more fun 8th seed?
So with Isaac, which would be 2 years from now, that's a 4 or 5 seed. I think Isaac, he's the only person. He's the only person on the roster right now who does anything elite. Okay. I think you're looking more at 6, 7, 8 seed right now, as currently constructed with Westbrook. But you're looking at fun. You're looking at just unlock the other pieces and see what you have, and see. I just think that you need some fun. And listen, this has not been a fun 8 years. And the worst part of it, Zach, is you can't even sound smart when you're analyzing them. We've gotten out of the wilderness a little bit. But in 2014, 2015, 2016, everything was so wrong you couldn't even put your finger on what was wrong. I mean, like in crunch time, the Magic would just they would lose games because someone fell down or someone threw the ball out of bounds, or there wasn't any. I remember the low point. I remember I didn't watch a game for a week because our crunch time play was called for Shabazz Napier, who missed it, and it's like, what are we doing here? And so I think there needs to be a light at the end of the tunnel as far as the reward goes.
There's a not famous, but there's a play that I remember where Hazonia, who they picked 5th in the 2015 draft, I believe, was on like a 4-on-1 and tried this fancy no-look behind the back pass that went out of bounds. And you could see Frank Vogel just die. Like just like a little bit of him died. And I remember I texted Frank like a clip like, hey, you hanging in? And he didn't respond. And I was like, maybe that was mean. Maybe that was too mean of me to text.
The first game that my now wife, then girlfriend, went to in Orlando was 2013, I think. And we lost on the last play of the game because Gustavo Ione, who had the ball to win the game, was fouled and then missed the free throws. And I remember looking at her and saying, this is it's probably good that you're getting acclimated to this so quickly.
Do you remember how you got Gustavo Ione?
I do. It was a sign and trade with Ryan Anderson.
So of the many themes of the what the happened since the Dwight Howard trade, one of them is you can forgive a lot of what they've done, and we'll talk about their draft history, okay, which is actually, I don't think, quite as bad as it appears. Their complete failure to maximize like fringe assets and players is like criminal. And signing and trading Ryan Anderson to the Pelicans for Gustavo Ione is like, how did this happen? And like they home run trade for Tobias Harris, right? Like they trade JJ Redick to the Bucks and they get Tobias Harris, who is everyone's like sexy. Why isn't he playing more prospect? Develops okay in Orlando. Then in what I can only assume is a fit of rage and impatience from Scott Skiles, who was the coach of the Orlando Magic for a very short period of time, and maybe the business side as well. They give Tobias Harris to the Pistons for the expiring contracts of Ersan Ilyasova and Brandon Jennings, which is one of 5 trades in the last 10 years that when it happened, I was like, this is incorrect information. This can't possibly be the trade. So it's fitting that your girlfriend, now wife, that Gustavo Ione, forgotten NBA player, and I don't even know where Gustavo, it's fitting that she was integrated into Magic fandom through Gustavo Ione.
Absolutely. What an experience for her.
So can we just run through, just for fun, the other plausible Russell Westbrook?
Absolutely.
So The Athletic just reported already, so they're spoiling this. To me, the single most plausible one in the NBA is the Charlotte Hornets, which is what the Athletic is now reporting, that they've emerged as a suitor. I actually don't know that that's true. I poked around a little bit last night and got a little too early to talk about kind of feedback. But they're just a team that's like, well, what else do we have going on? Like, what else are we gonna? Why not? So, like, you have you have an expiring contract of Nick Batum, which is $27 million. Nick Batum plus Terry Rozier, done. Let's wash our hands of it. The question is, like, what does Houston have to get back? Like, if they get back a load of nothing, and I actually don't think Terry Rozier is a load of nothing. Terry Rozier is a decent player who could play with James. Batum has aged apparently 25 years in the span of 18 months. I don't know what happened to him. But if you don't get back enough where James says, oh, okay, like I get what you did here, then you've just accelerated the James Harden unhappiness to a dangerous point. So it's that complicates them. So Charlotte, but that complicates any Russ trade, is that Houston, I would assume, wants something back that helps their team. So Knicks, I said on TV yesterday that I think I said I would be surprised if the Knicks were super interested. I'm going to walk that back a little bit and say this. I don't know the Knicks' interest level right now. They have been projecting some form of patience, or by Knicks standards, patience during this prolonged offseason. But they are one of the teams that could literally get Russell Westbrook for free. I mean, they have the cap space. So they renounce a couple guys, decline a couple options. They don't need to trade Houston anything for Russell Westbrook. But that, again, raises the possibility of, or the question of, Houston probably needs to get something back. And I don't know what the Knicks have that would interest them. But given their cap flexibility, I'm not going to disqualify the Knicks and their record of impatience here and there, frankly. I'm not going to disqualify the Knicks. Are there any other teams that are interesting to you, Kevin Clark, besides the Magic?
No, I mean, I think the Knicks would be fun. I think it would be very Knicks for him to go to a team like Charlotte and then go to the Knicks afterwards. Just like last year, he cost $40 million in 2022, and it's like, yeah, it's time. Take over the Garden, win 33 games.
Well, hopefully, maybe selling tickets by then. I don't know if the plague if the plague is over. We're not really doing great with the plague. It's not going well. At least up here in the Northeast, we're not doing very well.
Well, I'm in Florida. We can't exactly pound our chest down here.
I don't know what I've been to Florida a lot of times. It's something. My favorite team, if it were plausible, is Chicago. That would be the most fun team because you have Otto Porter's expiring contract, and Otto Porter can play with James. Thaddeus Young can play with James. Boom, done. The math works. You throw Russ in there with Levine, Markkanen, Carter. Just let him go crazy. Create shots for everybody. Sell some theoretical tickets in Chicago where everyone is so discontented with the franchise at this point, or now obviously hopeful with this new front office regime. Mm-hmm. And, boom, have a little fun for a couple of years. What's wrong with that? Become a little bit of a problem in the Eastern Conference. Like a minor problem, but a problem. Alas, I've never talked to Billy Donovan. Well, I've talked to Billy Donovan about Russell Westbrook on the record. It's mostly been vanilla stuff. I don't know that he took that job with the thought of, I might coach Russell Westbrook again. That seems to be an impediment to me.
Is there any team that in the Eastern Conference that Westbrook makes a legitimate finals contender?
Any realistic team?
Yeah.
I don't think any realistic team. I don't think any of the – I mean, you could build some crazy deals where he goes to Philly, but I just don't see any of that. I don't see anything like that transpiring. But, look, you can be surprised. I'm just going to look at the standings now. I don't think Boston gets involved. I don't think Toronto gets involved. I don't think Milwaukee – Miami, no. Indiana, he wouldn't make a contender. Brooklyn is probably almost certainly a no. Yeah, there's no. Detroit will get mentioned too. Detroit will get mentioned too as, again, just sort of a why not. We have Blake Griffin's contract. That one would surprise me a little bit. Look, I get surprised all the time. The NBA is crazy. I just see Detroit as probably not. Probably not. So you're rooting for this. You want just shake it up. Let's have some fun.
I'd like to see something. Yes. I can't do another year, especially with the Isaac injury. The Isaac injury screws up our timeline so much because I think there's a lot of projection you could throw on there where you say, okay, he develops and maybe they climb up the standings, all that stuff. And now that that's not there, I've seen this movie before. I've seen Fournier and Vucevic and if Gordon stays, Gordon and Terrence Ross. I know what this looks like. I've seen it enough. We're all set there.
Let's retrace some history. Where were you and what was your reaction when Dwight Howard was traded?
I was in Green Bay, Wisconsin, covering my first NFL training camp.
Wow.
And it was so the Wall Street Journal, where I was working at the time, covers the Olympics wall to wall. And so they were just like, do whatever you need to do at training camp. You're not writing an NFL piece until after the Olympics, so do whatever. So I remember being very relaxed in Green Bay, Wisconsin, just getting a little research, and then I saw this. And it was a relief a little bit. It was the same feeling I get when you ever in a thunderstorm on an airplane and then you just get out of it and you realize you're just not going to be in a thunderstorm anymore. It was that sort of feeling where it's like, okay, we don't have to do. Is he going to Brooklyn? Is he going to sign the tender? What's he going to do? And so I was a little bit taken aback by the return. And obviously, as far as getting Vucevic, I mean, that was actually pretty good. But I remember I was wondering why we didn't just take Andre Iguodala at the time, or some of those other, win now pieces. I think that the trade ended up not being a total disaster because of that. But I think that the moves after that there was just no sustainability. And so I was sort of as neutral as you can be when your favorite team trades a superstar. But I think history reflects okay on it.
Yeah, the trade has aged pretty well. I mean, Harkless is in there. Afalo became a good player for them that they turned into Evan Fournier. You have some Afalo remarks?
No, I have a Harkless remark, which is Harkless is another example of an asset we had that we renounced for nothing. We traded him to Portland for a 2020 second-round pick, top 55 protected.
Which is the NBA's version of nothing. That's the NBA's version of we have a rule that something has to be traded. This has been negotiated as the absolute minimum fake thing to satisfy the rule that somebody had both sides of a trade have to get something. So that's a fake pick. That's not a pick. That's nothing. And look, Mo Harkless isn't changing anyone's life, but he's like he's a decent NBA player. Like when you repeatedly just lose guys like that for zero, there is like a cumulative opportunity cost of like what could we have had here that we don't have now. But I thought the Dwight trade has aged well. I mean, they may be the winners of the Dwight Howard trade 9 years later or 8 years later. Their journey after that is one of the strangest 8-year odysseys, and it's still going, of any team that I can remember in modern NBA history. You pick any moment you want. Where do you want to start? What is the strangest one? What was the most disheartening one? What was the one that made you feel most hopeful? Pick any moment of the last 8 years and we can riff from there.
I think you'd have to start with the Oladipo trade.
The trade of Oladipo to
Oklahoma City for Sabonis and Serge Ibaka.
Sabonis goes to Oklahoma City in that
Yes.
trade.
Yeah. The Magic had drafted him. I think that was a last gasp effort, and also Bismack Biyombo was signed that year. That was just betting on a strategy that made no sense at the time. It continued to make no sense. The Magic had to offload Ibaka for Terrence Ross, which obviously he's off the bench. He's a great scorer, but they just made so many of those trades that there was a point, and this is probably true of every point in history for the Magic rebuild, that the players we had given away or traded would have destroyed the current team at any time. And that was the problem with that trade. So you end up getting rid of Oladipo, who obviously would have solved all of our problems had he developed the way he later developed in Orlando. And we ended up with Terrence Ross. Fine player, not Oladipo.
Let's flip that around. Oklahoma City trades Serge Ibaka. Come on a little trip with me, Kevin.
Okay.
They turned Serge Ibaka into Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. They turned Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo into Paul George. Yep. They turned Paul George into 5 first-round picks, 2 pick swaps, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So in a roundabout way, they turned Serge Ibaka, nice player, into 5 first-round picks, 2 pick swaps, and a guy that I think will make 1 or more all-star teams in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's incredible. That's just absolutely an incredible journey of transactions.
It's not incredible if you understand the deep, nuanced history of Orlando Magic transactions. It's the exact outcome I would have predicted. Like, yes, Oklahoma City will take these assets and flip them. It's very similar. The Patriots had this with Jimmy Garoppolo, where they traded Jimmy Garoppolo and then they ended up with like 20 picks because they just kept trading them until they just had everything. That's what smart teams do with assets. I mean, you can go down the list, by the way. We gave and I'm not saying Kyle O'Quinn is anything, but they just renounced Kyle O'Quinn or they traded him for a 2nd round pick, just like Harkless. They did that. Dwayne Dedmon, they just renounced him
that's a good one.
Yeah, for no reason.
Wave Joe Harris.
Scott Skiles, by the way, when he threw his tantrum and traded to Harris, he just quit a couple months later. He just quit.
Unbelievable.
And reports are, if you read those stories at the time, that he wanted to quit before the Harris trade. So he was sabotaging the team when he knew he was going to quit. So it was unbelievable. So when I hear that the Thunder taking those assets and turning them into positive things for 6-7 years, I'm not surprised because that is par for the course for that Hennigan front office.
Well, it's Hennigan became the fall guy, right? I think there was a lot of business side pressure on them to chase the playoffs. And look, they have made the playoffs now 2 years in a row. They are the kings of Game 1. How did you react when they won Game 1 in Toronto and then again in Milwaukee? Did part of your soul say maybe we can or were you just like, let's just get it over? Why did we even prolong? Why did we even pull this off?
In Toronto, I thought maybe. This year, I had seen enough from last year to understand it. What I would say, the funny thing that's now developed is the Game 1 every year, I'm so sure we're going to lose, so I don't invite anybody over. I just sit there, I watch the game analytically, whatever, and then I get hyped, and then I invite everybody over for Game 2, and we just get destroyed. And then it's like, why did I do this? Why did I believe like this? So I think that Toronto. I actually flew to Orlando to watch that Toronto series. and the games in Orlando.
Game 4, I recall, is a competitive game where it was like Orlando gave it their best shot and Toronto had to play pretty well to win that game and go up 3-1.
Yeah, I sure it was game. I think it was game. That might have been game
one of the games in Orlando was like the gut punch game where Orlando gave it a run and Toronto rallied and won.
Yeah, so I was not at that game. I was at the game where the Magic waved the white flag, and we just saw Pascal Siakam bully the entire Magic roster into quitting. So that was less fun.
Did you boo?
Did I boo? There were probably some booing. There's probably some booing. I wouldn't have booed against the Bucks this year because I now understand the limits of the team. But there was probably some booing.
So 2016. Let's let's revisit the summer of 2016 for a second.
Yes. Great.
They trade for Serge Ibaka, which I thought was actually, I was kind of an Oladipo pessimist that he ended up proving me very wrong. I actually thought that trade was like semi-defensible. It became less defensible when they paid Bismack Biyombo $72 million or whatever it was. And they already had Nick Vucevic on the team. So that's 2.5 centers, depending on how you classify Serge Ibaka. They already had Aaron Gordon on the team, who needs to play 4, but this is the ongoing saga of the Magic. They have small ball 4s that always end up playing 3, from Tobias Harris to Aaron Gordon. Then they were like, we got some money laying around. Jeff Green, you want $15 million to come on in? You look at that. In the year of our basketball gods, 2016, an NBA team had Bismack Biyombo, Serge Ibaka, Nick Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and Jeff Green on the same team and all making a shit ton of money. That is, I just remember being astonished. Like it's still astonishing.
It's still astonishing. Yeah, Jody Meeks was on that team. I mean, the funniest, I think the best thing about the Magic is just you get to learn about bottom of the roster guys throughout the league. Like I was looking up this morning, just trying to figure out the funniest person who's played for the Magic. I think it's Josh McRoberts.
Oh, that hurt. I like Josh McRoberts.
I like Josh McRoberts too, but I liked him a lot less when he played for my favorite team.
Can I tell you the funniest Magic moment other than the Hazonia pass that sticks in my head? I bet you remember this. Do you remember opening game of the 2013-14 season? Magic Pacers, I think. Yeah. Andrew Nicholson explodes for 20 points on 8 of 9 shooting. And because it's the first game of the season, it's the first Nerd League Pass game of the season. Yeah. All of Twitter is Andrew Nicholson is number 2 trending topic. They've really found something in Andrew Nicholson. I bet that's his career high. Do you remember that game? For some reason, I remember it vividly.
I remember it vividly too. And I also remember believing in Andrew Nicholson because there's a St. Bonaventure sort of group in media. That's right. I know them. I had been talked into Andrew Nicholson being the next great, we're going to have to retool the top 50 NBA players of all time to make room for Andrew Nicholson. That's what I was believing going into that. And so I was like, oh man, the hype is real. It's happening. It's happening. Because the thing is, and this sort of goes to your point about Ibaka, is everything with Hennigan always felt well thought out. And so I always was able to sort of justify it on the front end and say, hey, this is going to work. Andrew Nicholson, eye for talent. Here we go. And it turned out that Hennigan was actually quite a good doubles hitter, but that's just not how you build a team. And so, yes, it is. The summer of 2016 was kind of the year where we started to all sort of realize that this was heading in no direction that was productive.
Well, and if you to your point about what you just said about Rob Hennigan, if you go back at their draft and look at their draft history, they're kind of the story of how much luck you actually need when you play the lottery. So in 2013, that's the infamous Anthony Bennett draft. They take Oladipo at number 2. After him is Porter, Cody Zeller, Alex Len, Nerlens Noel. If you redrafted that draft, the 15th pick, Giannis, would go number 1. The 27th pick, Gobert, would go number 2. And the 10th pick, CJ McCollum, would go number 3. What are you Victor Oladipo was the correct pick there. There's just nothing wrong with that pick. 2014, they take Aaron Gordon at 4. Okay. Yep. The next picks are Dante Exum, Marcus Smart. You could argue Marcus Smart, Aaron Gordon, Julius Randle, Nick Stauskas, Noah Vonleh, Alfred Payton, which we will talk about. And then you get into the end of the lottery with Levine and Warren and Nurkic. Not a bad pick. No, and that's the draft, if you remember, where the Magic reportedly were praying asking, begging Porzingis to stay in the draft because they were going to take him, and they couldn't convince him. The next year, Porzingis enters the draft. They're at 5. They're one spot too late. They take Hazonia. You want to hear the next picks after Hazonia? Willie Cauley-Stein, Emmanuel Mudiay, Stanley Johnson, Frank Kaminsky are the next 4 picks. Then Miles Turner at 11, fine. And then the Devin Booker is the home run.
Devin Booker. Devin Booker wanted to play for the Magic, inexplicably. There's a headline out there. He asked the DeVos family to draft him.
Is that true?
Yeah.
You're never. I'm not going to say anything.
You
said the D word. You said the D word.
I know.
I'm moving on. And then fast forward 2018 is the Luka trade draft where they're at 6 and they take Mo Bamba. And I remember there being some Trae Young buzz and are the Magic trying to trade up to get Trae Young? But the problem is if 1 and 2 are set at Ayton and Bagley, okay, and 3 and 5 want Luka and Trae, they're not going to trade down to a position where they can't get those guys. And so that leaves you trying to convince Memphis to trade 4. And Memphis loved Jaren Jackson Jr. I just don't think they had really any chance or any real hope to get up there. And you look at all of those draft picks and you're like, they're not bad. They're actually good picks. And it just shows you the luck of getting the number 1 pick in the Anthony Davis year or the Zion year or the LeBron year. It's there's no skill in that. It just happens. And then you have the luck of getting the number 2 pick and they always fall in the lottery. The lottery is you know what? They're still paying for the karma of the Shaq Penny back to the Shaq Weber / Penny back-to-back lottery wins. They're still paying.
And then Dwight a decade later.
That's right. Since Dwight, the lottery's been unkind to them. But you look at those draft picks, right? And you're like, fine, not bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, every pick was defensible. Every pick was generally productive except Hazonia, basically. And so I don't think you can really blame him. It was just Hennigan for the draft. So it was just a lot of bad luck. It was just winning the second pick in maybe the wrong year, even though Oladipo was the pick that year. So I think his drafting was significantly better than his, asset management, you'd say.
And this regime has picked up Markelle Fultz for very little price. Yes. And they're higher, I think, on Markelle Fultz than I am, but that's a worthy gamble. He made huge strides for them. Where are you on the Markelle Fultz train?
I love him. I think that he's an amazing story. The confidence he was playing with in the bubble was extraordinary, and to see his growth was unbelievable. I start to worry now, and this is true of Isaac too, because Isaac's played 1 healthy season. What happens when you have to pay both those guys? What do you do? Do you try to lock in Fultz now to a team-friendly deal? Do you try to lock in Isaac to a team-friendly deal? I obviously, if I have to commit big money to one guy, I'm going to pick Jonathan Isaac. But I start to worry about overpaying Fultz for the trajectory he's on, I guess you could say. As we see where this is going, why don't we give it another year and see what happens? See what happens next year. See what happens. And obviously, restricted free agency is always a risk in these situations, especially with high upside guys. But I think generally, Fultz, the confidence he has in the lane, he's never going to be, an elite shooter. But I think that there's a lot there. I love him, and I think that Magic fans, and this goes to what the heat Dan Devine got last night. Magic fans are fiercely protective of him, because they defended him and they saw the growth and they want to keep that going.
I like it, and we just went through all the drafts where they got decent players who weren't the guy, and the story of the Magic since Dwight is they haven't been able to find a guy, and those are hard to find, and they have the number 1 pick from the 2017 draft on their team, and so there's hope. I understand the hope of maybe that could grow into the guy. Should we talk about the Saric Payton trade? Is it too painful? It's kind of a ridiculous little transaction. It's not little, but it's a ridiculous transaction in NBA history.
So the Elfrid Payton thing is actually it was a double blow, because Payton's inability to shoot then forced Oladipo off the team. Because the problem was that the backcourt had no elite shooting whatsoever, so we had to try to mix it up. And by the way,
he's the only player, I think, in NBA history where semi-serious stories are written about whether his hair was messing with his jump shot. That was actually that wasn't just a funny Twitter thing. People were like, maybe that's a thing.
Yeah, I remember that. Turns out that was not the case. Turns out he just couldn't shoot. That was awful. The Payton thing is still one of the most frustrating things, because you saw this. I remember you talking up his passing. I would see it too. He had an unbelievable ability to see the court. And if he was just a little better at shooting, his career goes so differently. But I just think this was the wrong era for him. I used to love watching his athleticism. I remember when I lived in New York, I went to go see him play in Brooklyn, and just watching him live was an experience. But there was just no there because he couldn't shoot, and there was no value there, and we kind of saw the ceiling pretty early. And I'm surprised that they chose to stick with him instead of trading him and trying to get a shooting point guard to augment Oladipo.
Another guy they essentially gave away to Phoenix for a second round pick in the end. Also, never was the defender that people thought he was going to be. Like that was supposed to be his calling card, and he never became. He's active and he can rove the passing lanes. But so to review, the trade was the Sixers take Elfrid Payton as just to be mean because they have some source of information that the Magic want Elfrid Payton, and they say, "Oh, you want him? Well, come get him. Like we want your pick, which was 2 picks later, I think, with Dario Saric. Oh, and by the way, you have one of our picks
from the Dwight trade.
From the Dwight trade, we want it back. Do you know who that pick became? If I'm tracing it correctly,
I remember, but you have to remind me.
If I'm tracing it correctly, after a pick swap with the Kings, it became De'Aaron Fox.
Oh, right. Yeah. Amazing. Savvy move by the Magic.
The odyssey of that pick. The Sixers trade it in the Dwight trade, and it just sits there. It sits and sits and sits for a couple years, and then they get it back in one fell swoop. Just mean. It was mean. One fell swoop. And then 3 years later, after a pick swap with the Kings, again, there's like a 5% chance I'm not doing this correctly, it becomes De'Aaron Fox. I mean, the NBA is amazing. Does the NFL have pick journeys like this? I know it's different, but...
Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially when a team trades up for a quarterback or something, and then it becomes this, or the Bears trade up for Mitch Trubisky in a trade in a year with Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, that sort of thing. Yes, those picks are traced. Don't worry.
Let's end with this. Let's say they don't get Russ.
Okay.
What are you hoping for the next 3 or 4 years? Do you want, if they don't get Russ, do you just let's just tank a couple times and try to get the number 1 pick? Like, what is the route that you want them to take to relevance?
Okay, so trust in the front office is probably pretty important here. Isaac getting healthy again is pretty important here. Obviously, the core needs to be shaken up, whether that's Vucevic or Gordon. The mid-level, apparently everybody has the mid-level this year, and there's just not a lot of good players available. I saw a Jordan Clarkson rumor the other day. That's kind of where we're at, and you're shivering. That's I'm doing the same thing. I think that there's a path. I think Bamba can develop as, his shot blocking analytics are pretty good. His rim protecting analytics are pretty good. I thought it was interesting. Josh Robbins had a piece the other day about how teams drive at Mo Bamba all the time, because I guess the word is out that the narrative is that he's bad at the rim, but he's actually pretty good once he's there.
I thought he made real strides last season before the stoppage.
I am pro Bamba generally. And so I think that there's probably a path there with a couple of these guys, but I'm all in favor of a soft rebuild because there's not a lot of flexibility. Fournier is going to, I would guess, opt in because of how little money there is to spend, even though he would be kind of the belle of the ball as far as free agents, because there just aren't any. So I to answer your question, I would tear it down to about, I wouldn't strip it for parts, but I'd tear it down to about 25% of where they are, and just let this front office get their guys in, because I think that the Hennigan guys, and listen, some of these guys are good assets, but I just don't think that there's any building there. And as many lottery picks, as many first round picks, as many young guys this front office can bring in, the better.
Fournier is interesting because I agree with you. I would bet on him opting into $17 million, and then he becomes a $17 million expiring contract. Fournier is a good player. I just think he's in over his head for his role in Orlando, particularly in the playoffs. But then you face an interesting decision if you're the Magic, because you have taken pride in making the postseason, and in both the last 2 seasons they've kind of surged toward the end and convinced themselves, hey, maybe we're actually like a really good team here. But if you start slow, and again, the top of the East and the middle of the East are better next year, the playoffs are no given, you almost have to consider trading Fournier for whatever you can get, because I bet they could get like a lottery protected first for him. This is the same thinking Sam Presti is doing right now with Kelly Oubre, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of teams jockeying to win the championship. A lot of teams think they have a shot at it. A 3-and-D wing or a 3-and-whatever wing with some playmaking ability. Like, we're going to be able to get a pick for that. And I think if you're the Magic, if he opts in, I don't have real good intel here, but I doubt they want to pay him, 4 years, 75 on his next contract or whatever. Like, you got to think about it. But if you're rolling, maybe you just roll it out and play it out. I don't know.
I mean, that is a little bit how the Vucevic thing happened, is that it looked like he was going to get moved 2 years ago. Then he becomes an all-star. All of a sudden we've got him on the books of this big contract. And I think he's outperformed his contract. I think he's a good player.
He's a legitimately really good player. Nick Vucevic is really good.
He just requires a style of play that is not totally flexible. You have to, and here's my take on Vooch, okay? I don't like the band Mumford and Sons. If you ask me, I would say I don't like the band Mumford and Sons, okay?
Fair.
But when Mumford and Sons comes on, I like loud rock, punk rock, all that stuff. But every year, I look at my Spotify Top 100, and Mumford and Sons is on there because every time I hear a song, I go, oh, I kind of like this. And with Vooch, if you say to me, do you like having him on the team? I go, no. He clogs the, it's half court. There's no pace, whatever. But every time I watch him, I go, oh, thank God he's on the court. Oh my God. Thank God. What would have happened if he wasn't there? We would have scored 34 points in this game. And he's a good passer, all that stuff. He's a security blanket. I don't know if you play 2K, but when I play 2K, nobody gets open, nobody hits threes, and I end up just passing it to Vooch for a 10-foot jump shot. And then you do that enough and you realize, well, that's actually what the Magic are doing, is that they don't have any other safety valves, and it becomes Vooch. And so I think that he's helpful to have around. I just think if you're aiming for something more, he can't be your best player.
Vooch as Mumford and Sons that's a great place to end. So look, I hope we can reconvene in a year or some period of time when some interesting stuff is happening. Because my obsession with the Magic is legitimate. I don't do it to make fun of them. I think rebuilding in the NBA is really hard. It's been an incredible, strange path for them, and I like talking about it. So thank you, Kevin Clark, for coming on to talk about it. Kevin Clark, you can read him at The Ringer. Slow News Day is every week, right?
Once a week. Yep. Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. It's must watch even for a guy like me who don't and you get unbelievable guests. Who did you have recently? Peter King, Joe Buck.
Peter King, Mark Ingram, Ravens running back.
Your Super Bowl stuff was just, when you take it on the road in the Super Bowl, it's just delightful. Kevin, thank you very much, man.
Thanks, Zach.